Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm sorry this is a day late, guys. It was absolutely downpouring yesterday, and well, let's say that's pretty much what kept me busy the entire day yesterday. But okay. Before getting into the big reveal of this episode, though, one thing I liked about this episode right out of the gate is how the destruction of the castle itself tells so much of the story of what happened on that day that Loki killed Harald, and yet still leaving many, many questions about what exactly happened. Because the first thing immediately that's not passing the smell test in regards to the story about Loki killing Harald is the fact that only Loki and Harald and Ja Rule were the ones who survived. Even if it's true that Loki did the deed, you can already tell there's a lot of details missing from this story, just from the fact that there aren't any eyewitnesses. Even learning Harold was an ancient giant like Ors tells a tale in itself about the reason probably why he was, and that's not even to speak of the other wrinkle that Harudin and Loki are half brothers. So yeah, a lot of revelations that are adding an air of mystery around just what really happened on that day that Harold was killed. Like there's more to this story than what you're than what's being told on the surface for sure. And also, admittedly, one thing that the anime did better than the manga for me with this episode is oddly making me feel more sympathetic for Roto after his initial encounter with the Straw Hats in the manga. I kind of went on after his whole like sun god shtick and like antagonizing the Straw Hats. I was kind of on this really big bender of like I don't really much care for this guy, but admitted, but like I said, like he never really achieved likable status to me after that point. But uh, at least not until after a very specific point. But strangely enough, this episode and revisiting his backstory of how he and Harudin became friends does make me like it does make me say, okay, he's not as bad as I initially thought he was. So it's like I have done a little bit of a turnaround on Roto after this episode. Um, he's still a bit of a creep and introverted though. Don't get me wrong. Um, with all that said, though, we finally get the official reveal of who the Shanks look like is. His name is Figarland Shamrock, so he's Garling's son, and and so yeah, we basically get the so we basically get the so yeah we basically get the familial there is so we guess just get the official familial connection there. There's something going on with Shanks and how this connects back to his and how so yeah the bigger question now is how this connects back to Shanks. Like something's going on here. Like the fact that Shamrock looks like Shanks, it ain't just a fucking like a one for one for Shanks, like with just longer hair. There's definitely a connection there. As far as what, well, you'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, um, and even more so than the reveal of figure of Shamrock being Garling's son. Um, we also get he's also played by the very chilling like his name is Kenji Suda is the voice actor, and there's an interesting behind the scenes thing to talk about with Shamrock's voice actor here, which is that Suda is taking over for Shuichi Ikeda, who voiced Shanks as well as Shamrock in their first appearance at Marie Joie. So obviously this is a case of after learning that they're not the same character, Toei decided to recast Shamrock. And if that is the case, I am curious now who Funimation will get to play him when they start dubbing Elbaf, but Elbaf because I don't think Funimation. If Funimation does kind of do this thing of like kind of doing the same thing that Toei does of like recasting when recasting in situations like this, then I do imagine Funimation isn't gonna have like Brandon Potter like playing isn't gonna have Brandon Potter playing playing Shamrock. They're gonna get a different guy for that too. Uh, But technicals aside, this episode definitely displays the major difference between Shanks and Shamrock right out of the gate, which is to say, Shamrock, like basically all nobles, I guess you could say, clearly displays much more of a cold, calculated, and sort of and detached ruthlessness of like the only thing he cares about is fulfilling his mission for basically for the honor of his family name, for honor of the government, all that stuff. So it's like we basically learned so much about Shamrock just within this very first appearance that even though he's a typical world noble, you can tell there is there is a ruthless efficiency behind everything he does, which in some ways you could say is what Shanks also is, but with Shanks it's mostly his enemies that he basically that he portrays that kind of ruthlessness. With Shamrock, it's with Shamrock like the guy has this cold, calculated, ruthless efficiency on 24/7, which in some ways is even more dangerous to when it comes to dealing with someone like that, because when you have someone like that who is like that, like 24/7, it makes for an even more deadly adversary. And one thing I also really like about this confrontation with Loki, though, is without needing to say anything, it's clear why Shamrock and Gunko are so determined to have Loki join the Knights of God, because they need him to in order to gain control of Elbaf. Like one of the things is, much like Wano, Elbaf is a sore spot in the government's view as being one of the few countries that still remains autonomous and, let's be honest, kind of thriving despite not being under the government's thumb. And I think that's why it's such a pain for them, because the government doesn't care about whether they're thriving or not. If it's something that isn't under their umbrella, they'll take it by force if necessary, which in itself shows how much the government fears the power of the giants. Like for Wano, it was fearing the power of Pluton, but now but with Elbaf, they pretty much they fear everything of that the Giants are. Even with this more peaceful direction they're taking, the fact that the government still fears like what the Giants are capable of, it basically says everything. Now, in saying that, this episode is a bit strange from an adaptation perspective as well. It didn't necessarily censor anything. There were aspects of this episode where the storyboarding did still feel a little bit flat compared to the manga. Like it didn't have like it did like when looking at the manga panels and the anime, the anime doesn't have as many unique angles or camera shots. Like it felt like it was all like playing out very linearly and one-dimensional, I guess, compared to the manga. Which I feel they could have gotten a little more creative in that regard with this episode, but it still is good for what it is. Also, I read ahead beyond the chapter this episode adapted, and yeah, I'm kind of hoping they start adapting more than one chapter soon, because I did forget that there's a small gap in between what happened in this episode and when we meet the mystery man wearing the Japanese straw hat. So, and just in general, I think we are like, for me, it's like one of those things where I think we are at a safe enough spot to where I think Toei can't afford to start adapting more than one chapter, but we'll just have to wait and see if they actually did that, since this is like a pseudo yearly release now. So it'll be interesting to see if they stuck with this one chapter and episode format for the rest of the episodes for this year's release, or if they actually did kind of start like adapting more than one. Like more than one chapter after this point or something. Like again, it's feeling like as much as I'm still enjoying the anime, it is feeling like you could afford to adapt maybe at least two chapters in an episode now, I think. But yeah, guys, That's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe if you're on Blue Sky. Analyze Crunchyroll, Patient for Israel, hit the subscribe button, and just share it around, guys. Dark Knight of the Night signing off. Later, everyone.